Species can be defined in three different ways, namely subjective, intersubjective, and objective. The subjective criteria is that each species of life enjoys different kinds of pleasures. The intersubjective definition of a species is that each species plays a certain role in an ecosystem, so that behavior or role in relation to other species is the definition of that species. And finally, the objective criterion is that each species has a certain type of body, shape, size, form. So we're talking about three different ways we can define a species, not just by the body. And beyond the subjective, intersubjective, and objective realities is the soul perceiving these realities. In grammar, we use the terms first person, second person, and third person to express these ideas. A living entity's pleasure or anand is the first person experience because it is totally private. You can never know exactly how a person feels, even though you may have been in the same situation before. Only a person themselves can truly know how they feel, so that this first person experience is totally private. A living entity's relations or sat is the second person experience, as it is behavior in relation to a specific individual. For example, we can talk about a father-child relationship. The child sees the fatherly behavior of the person, and other people who are brothers, sisters, mothers, friends, etc. will see the same person in a different way. So the same person is known by other people, but each time this knowledge is different because the knowledge is dependent upon pairwise relationships. The knowledge is unique to the pairwise relationship. Unlike feelings which are totally private to a person, the relationships are intersubjective but not public because they are in a pairwise relationship. So we can call this the second person knowledge. Finally, the living entity's body or chit is third person knowledge, because everybody can know the body and there is no uniqueness of a pairwise or per relationship basis knowledge, nor is there privacy of the first person experience. So there is three kinds of knowledge: the first person, second person, and third person. In Sanskrit grammar, these are also called one, two, and many, and what English says first, second, and third person is basically equivalent to the one, two, and many in Sanskrit. The third person experience is the experience of many, so that these are nearly identical concepts and represent three ways of knowing. Now, modern science studies everything only in the third person manner and neglects the first person and the second person account of a species. So, by a species, we mean that which is known only in the third person manner. Advances in science, for example, in atomic theory, show that even this third person reality is actually a possibility and not a definite fact. Rather, facts emerge from this possibility. So, the problem of how this possibility becomes a reality is open in biology just because it is open in physics. Then, apart from this possibility in the third person sense, there is possibility in the interpersonal reality, or the second person reality, which is also a definition of species, although in a behavioral sense. And finally, there is first person reality, which defines a species as the type of happiness or pleasure or likes and dislikes that a living entity enjoys. So in modern science, we only talk about the third person reality, but in Vedic philosophy, we are also talking about the second and the first person realities. So the modern science description, even if it was more accurate in terms of describing nature as possibility rather than facts, would still be only 1/3 of the total thing that we need to talk about. Thomas Nagel wrote an interesting paper on this question called "What is it like to be a bat?" And he goes on to state that this first person sense of being cannot be reduced to a third person observation of material states. As we talked about earlier, this first person sense of being precedes the third person expansion of this being into a body. However, even this first person sense of being is material in Vedic philosophy. There is nothing spiritual about the feeling of a certain type of emotion or desires, likes and dislikes, and so on. These are still material identities, although they are matter of a different kind, and therefore the states of the soul. So when the soul has a desire, you don't say soul is the desire. You say the soul has a desire, or soul wants something. Because they are material, they can be talked about objectively, as anyone can adopt this material identity. So it's a unique type of category that we can say first person objective. It is first person because it is private, nobody else knows it, and yet it is objective because it's a material reality which is external to the soul. So if you're having personal feelings, these feelings are not you, and somebody else can have the same feelings too. And yet, if you're having a feeling, nobody can know exactly what you're feeling. So they can never claim that I'm feeling exactly how you're feeling. So they're private, and yet they're objective.